Hey everybody, I'm Pete Cospin here with Thank God I'm Queer. I'm actually doing my first interview for my new channel. I've been on YouTube for a while, but this is kind of a new venture for me. I'm here with my first guest, Vadi Violet, who actually runs a YouTube channel called The Queer Chaplain, and have seen some of her videos and very interested in the idea of queer theology, drag, and spirituality, and wanted to just kind of pick her brain and see her thoughts and what she thinks about the idea of drag and spirituality and just and where she is in her life today. Bonnie, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me this morning or afternoon or whatever it is when folks are listening.
I have to apologize. I'm the one that was late to this, so I do appreciate you being flexible in this. I'm currently home on COVID quarantine. I think COVID's kind of affected my brain a little bit, where we're going to push through no matter what, right?
Yeah, totally. I definitely understand.
Awesome. So talk to us a little bit about your channel, The Queer Chaplain. What is your idea behind it? What's your theory? What are you trying to achieve with this channel for yourself, for the community at large, or for the world, or how you see it?
Okay, great. So I'm a transgender queer spiritual drag artist and digital chaplain. And so A Queer Chaplain, the YouTube channel is a way for I mostly interview drag queens and trans folks and have them talk about their experience with either their drag or their transness and their spirituality, um, and help them lace their narrative with a spiritual thread. And so it's just as much an opportunity for the drag artist or the trans person to work in integrating, like I said, putting a thread of spirituality in their understanding of their drag or their transness, as well as kind of giving the audience an opportunity to see that we have spirit and spirituality as drag artists and trans people, that we do have these spiritual lives. And a big reason why I do that is there has been so many times in my life when I was told that I didn't have permission to access God or spirituality or even the spirit within myself, in a really intentional way because of how I identified or how people saw me in the world. And so I really want to help people to invite spirituality into their life, no matter where they're at. Basically, kind of around death and dying to self, which is kind of when we come to see ourselves in a new identity.
I love that. And so the idea behind my channel is empowerment through authenticity, and I love the idea of permission. So when you think about permission to connect spiritually, or to think about God, or however it is that you do connect, how did you come to that where you were able to give yourself permission, and have you given yourself permission?
Yeah. I think so much has happened. I think kind of for me, it was getting to a space of desperation. I got to a place in my life where I was drug addicted. I was doing some pretty amazing things. Like I was running a nonprofit that I'd founded when I was young. I was doing a lot of really great things, but my spirit, right. And there were some things that I was doing in my life, some behaviors that I wasn't super thrilled with, that I couldn't quite let go of. And so I was introduced into the idea of recovery, of eliminating substances like drugs and alcohol out of my diet, if you will. And through that process, I met other queer folks who talked about God and talked about higher power or some sort of spiritual self that helped them live these successful lives without drugs and alcohol. And I was just totally like shocked that queer folks could say God and it not hurt, because I had been hurt so badly.
I love that. And so for me, from my own perspective, I believe because we've had to almost live in these two different lives. I mean, I was actually married for 28 years to a woman, had a kid, and didn't actually come out till I was 44. So I had these two brains going all the time. I mean, how I really knew myself to be and how I was living in this world. And I think because the LGBTQ community, we've almost had to, I think we all have had to do that in a sense, it's opened us up to virtual or other ideas of what consciousness is and what God is. And so I think we're uniquely designed to connect spiritually. And I see how we use substances such as drugs and alcohol and sex and whatever it might be, any type of addiction, because our brain is trying to run at that higher function and we're not allowing it to. So we almost have to kind of dumb it down a little bit in order to just be able to breathe. Does that make any sense to you?
Uh, yeah, I think to some degree, yeah. I mean, church to me and God had been such a big part of my childhood. I grew up in a community. I grew up in a small town in Idaho, and a fairly poor family. I had a difficult time being at home. I had a difficult time being at school and feeling comfortable and not feeling like I had to fill a role. And church was a place I could escape to and just exist. And I felt really safe and seen. And just like church was my place when I was young. And then once I realized that I was queer, I was diagnosed with HIV. That kind of pushed me out of the gay closet at that time. And at that time, I felt like I had to leave church and God because church, because of who I was, I didn't feel like I could go to church anymore.
So did God come to you or did you come to God? How did you get
Yeah.
back? Or I don't know if you define your spirituality as God like.
Yeah, I often use the word God. Sometimes I don't. But God never left me, and I never really left God. I just started to see things differently, and didn't access God. I don't know. It's like I think separation is not real. It's not, it's a delusion. It can be our reality because that's how we perceive it, but we are always whole. We're not broken. We don't ever break. We just, I don't stop seeing parts of ourselves. It doesn't stop being there. It's just not, we're not relating to it. We're not seeing it. And so I think for me, the gradual process has begun to allow me to be all of who I am wherever I am. And through that process, I am connected with God. God is within me. I am a co-creator with the creator, which are not experiences that I had with God the whole time. However, God was there the whole time. And one of the things that I think is great, and one of the things I like to do with helping people lace their narrative with a spiritual thread, is that we can kind of go back in our history and see how God was there when we didn't see it at that time. And I think that changes our narrative. And I think it reminds us of our resilience, and it builds our faith that there is a God, there is like whatever it is that we believe. And it also gives us hope when we're in those times when we just can't seem to see God or spirit or purpose or whatever it is, that we can know that it's still there, even if we're not seeing it in a way that would be helpful.
I love that. So you're talking about really kind of changing your relationship with your past story and changing its meaning and your actual insertion into or immersion into that story of how it identifies you. Is that true?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, I think the big thing around my spirituality now too is like for so long, I was just a product of everything that happened to me. So I was created by the sexual assault. I was created by being raised the way that I was raised. I was, all these sorts of things. I was just kind of like a victim, or I just left with chips and chings and, paint or whatever that the world and everything else put on me. And a lot of the times I didn't even acknowledge that that was going on. And if I did, I didn't feel like I had any sort of power or agency in it. And so I think initially in my spirituality, I had a desperation. I needed God. I needed spirituality. I'd really come to understand that I could not do this alone. Through the process, though, I've come to trust myself. And now I'm not desperate for God or desperate for a connection with spirituality, but I have a desire for it. Like I want it. And there is still kind of a need, yes, but it's like a no-brainer now. It's like I know that my life is feels and is expressed in a way that's more of an alignment with what I'm trying to achieve when I am actively seeking a connection and an understanding of a God as I understand it in that moment in time.
Are you familiar with the concept of 4 or 5D living? Because I kind of that's what I hear from you, and that's where I'm in this space of where I have like these dual consciousnesses. One is the Pete that's actually here, then one is like it's almost sort of like watching from above and has the option or the choice about whether to engage in situations and things that are happening at that time and how I engage with them. Is that how you kind of see yourself now at this higher level of choice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of being in that space of building an awareness, to kind of see how it is that I am acting and responding and how people are responding to me. So I think that is a part of it, but I think it's even a little bit more beyond that now. Beyond might not be, just in a different space. Is that's all more integrated. Like it's all one and the same. And because I'm aware enough, I'm connected enough to where, like, and for me, being able to come to understand myself as trans and to let her out more recently has really allowed me to land in my body and to have a relationship with my body that I have never had in my entire life, which again is, beginning to notice that my spirit inhabits all of my body, and my spirit is what animates my body anyway. But my body was just kind of a thing that was part of it, but it wasn't something I was really super connected to, due to a lot of trauma and whatnot. Disassociation is a very easy thing for me to experience, and so being in my body is something that is really new and exciting and fresh for me at this time in my life. Now, 42 years old, I'm finally feeling like I'm in my body, and that's in my body with my spirit, with my emotions, with my thoughts, all at the same time.
And I do think that disassociation is something that I know that was my mechanism, you know what I mean? Not really being in having an embodiment, you know what I mean? And I do believe that's why a lot of people, I think, in my opinion, turn to substances and things of that nature.
Yeah.
That they don't have that embodiment. So I truly believe that the only people that we can really help are those that we've kind of gone through those same situations. So what would you say to that little boy in Idaho that has just made the decision that he has to step away from church, where he's found that connection and now he feels alone? What would you say to him or her, or they, to help them at that moment?
Them, yeah.
You've used, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad pronouns are something I think that we're still, even in the LGBTQ community, getting kind of used to, right? So I want to make sure I'm completely inclusive of everybody, right?
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. And I'm someone who I love all my pasts and all my past identities, and there's nothing I want to not remember and not have be a part of who I am and how people know me. I think for me, it's like one of the things that I struggled for a long time was just seeing that and knowing that I could exist in the form that I am now. And so I think it was really important for me to find community or to find people who looked like me, or maybe what I would like to be, or, if there's something I'm intrigued by, or, so I think, I don't know. And there's so many opportunities online and, digital, there's just so many ways to kind of get exposed to different types of people. And I don't know. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just know that that you can invite spirit and a God of your understanding, or maybe even just a God that you hope is there in life. And it might be useful to you. And if you're coming to a point where what you believe in doesn't fit anymore, come to understand it, like come to make your God bigger, rather than just gone or wrong. So for me, I would think and that's why a lot of why I like to interview other people and talk with them about their spirituality, is because it expands my understanding and it helps me to have a concept of God or the creator or the world or purpose that is big enough for me to exist in fully, and even more fully, and all of us too. And so I think that's the big thing, is just, if your God is too small, work on making it bigger. And I use God loosely, but I think you all know what I'm trying to say.
I love that. It's interesting how there's like no end to that, seeing God as bigger, you know what I mean? Because the concept is almost unthinkable to the human brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see the juxtaposition of drag and spirituality? Because I mean, you could look at it one place of like putting on a costume, but I think at the same time it kind of reveals other aspects or facets of yourself, right? I mean, it almost harkens back to the idea of like the two spirit, you know, from like tribal traditions of where it was the two spirit person, or it was the bisexual person, or the LGBTQ that was seen as the one that, you know, saw beyond and got the vision and told them whether to go to war or not, or famine or whatever it was. So how do you see drag really enhancing or helping or being a part of spirituality for you?
Yeah. So for me, that was the thing. Even before I got into doing drag myself, just about 3 years ago, I started in 2014 with the first thought of interviewing drag queens, and I saw drag queens as kind of our spiritual leaders, or drag artists. You know, they were lifting our spirits. They were making us laugh. They were teaching us things. They were advocating for us in the streets, and activists. They were raising money to take care of us, to help house us and feed us, and, you know, dealing with HIV and so many other things. And drag queens are like visible and out in the world. They kind of take the brunt of everything. And so I'm like, who else would be like, that's what I want from a pastor. That's what I want from a spiritual leader. That's what I wanted from a church. You know, I want, you know, like, church and all that should be kind of a hospital, and it should be part of creating a community that we can care for one another and come to just do life with one another. And so I think the queer community, we've done it, and we've done it our own little way. But I think there's powerful to call it spiritual, like it's spiritual shit. And I think that we can claim that, we can reclaim that experience for ourselves. And so for me, I think that was a lot of it, was helping people see that though we might not use the words, we might not call ourselves spiritual, we might not call ourselves a disciple or a pastor or whatever, that we are acting as if, and we are having an impact on the world in a similar way. And so I think, though, it could be helpful I know it's been helpful for me to invite my spirit into my queerness, and all of that sort of stuff. Again, it just kind of expands everything for me, which just makes me feel so much better about being here.
I love that. So, what is the superpower of drag? Because you see this whenever you talk to somebody or hear like an interview of someone after maybe they've tried drag for the first time, or anything like that. You see this like power, this like energy that comes up in them that's really within them, but they never gave themselves agency to have before. I mean, is it like putting on a Superman's cape or Superwoman's or super, you know, whoever cape, super question mark cape, or what is it about drag that makes you like bring up that different energy, you know, that's different and powerful that you're speaking of before?
Yeah, I think, I think drag is probably experienced differently by different people. I know that I was under the impression when I first started drag that I was like putting on a persona, like I was becoming somebody else. And that was really difficult for me in the beginning. And I think that's because I was trans, and me stepping into being more feminine and wearing, I was bearded, and in drag, I would wear I was like showing parts of my body I never showed in normal, in normal life. But for me, I think it was me beginning to express my gender, or to explore my gender. And so for me, it was a very vulnerable and very sacred and very terrifying and exciting experience. And it was an extension of me. It wasn't just something I put on Um, and I wanted to use it as a vessel to help people see more of me.
Mhm.
Um, the longer I've done drag, I definitely have felt less, I can just have fun with it. And it doesn't it is still an extension of me, but it's not so much of there's a vulnerability always, but it's just a little bit different because I've come to like see myself differently. I think what we do for our audiences, and I think trans people just do this by existing in public. But drag artists also, I think there's been so many people who've come up to me and they feel inspired to do something different with the way that they express themselves. Like I remember talking with someone and he came up to me, he's like, after like seeing you, he's like, I think I'm going to wear color, which doesn't sound outrageous to me. But, for this individual, the idea of wearing bright colors or wearing color in their clothing was like beyond how they thought they could express themselves. And it was like they could try it out, and I think that's what we do for folks is I think the more visible we become, we almost give people permission to, not that they need it, but I think that we invite people to go outside of their boxes and their perceptions of self in the world, and just kind of see what it would feel like to do something different and to be a little bit more expressive.
I love that. So it's interesting to me. My little hubby, neither one of us do drag yet, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
he was in kind of a depressed place when we met. And so when I started, he's almost like my little dress up doll because he
Mm.
really lets me put him in anything I want to. And one of the first things he said was, I want new clothes with color, because everything he had was very drab and very dark. And I think that was because of where he was. He's in this very emo place. So I love the idea. And I love being able to express myself on him, like those little cutout dolls you have when you're a kid and you get to.
Mm-hmm.
And for myself, I have bought my first pair of thigh high boots. Haven't come in yet, and I haven't ever done anything. So I'm interested.
Wait till you put those boots on.
I'm interested to see what happens for me, because right now I'm in an improv class, and it's interesting that the character that keeps coming out is this very sort of bitchy femmy girl that like I don't really show in any other space. So it's like really interesting who will become. But Bonnie, this has been great. So I want you to tell me anything that you would like the audience to know. Talk to us about your channel, invite us in your space and what you're doing, and how we can be connect with you, how we can be of help to any project that you're working on, or just what's up with Bonnie today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. And so A Queer Chaplain is on YouTube, but I'm also like on Twitch and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. And it's really, those are just avenues and ways for me to try to connect with different people, and to hopefully create opportunities for them to meet, like drag artists. I think I've interviewed just under 30 drag artists, and probably about half a dozen trans folks at this point in time. And so I'm just really hoping to invite people, more diverse people, to be seen and to be seen in a different way. And so folks are interested in sharing themselves, folks that are trans, folks who are drag artists who would like to talk with me about their spirituality. I would love that. If you're curious to hear others and you're trying to find your own understanding of spirituality, or how reconciling how who you are today, or how you've come to see yourself, like reconciling that with your spirituality. I also have podcasts. So if folks just like the Audible, there is that. You can look at A Queer Chaplain on any, wherever you listen to podcasts. But I think one other thing that my exciting and really challenging project right now is a podcast called Splintered Grace. And it is a podcast that I have with my aunt, Tina. She is a conservative Christian, who lives in Arizona. And we started a podcast probably about a year ago now. We went 20 years without being in relationship with one another because of my queerness, and her spirituality, or her God, or her Jesus, and really came down to our perceptions of one another and our belief that we couldn't exist together. And she was like a hero for me. She took me to church when I was young. And so the loss of each other in our lives was quite devastating for each of us. And so we talk about what it was like for us to come back into relationship with each other, what we had to do, what the process of forgiveness was, and that conversation. The second season, we just talk about whatever we feel like talking about, and we kind of show people how to be in conversation with one another. And then this season, which starts next week on August 12th, you can watch live on any of the socials at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to start talking about those things that we're scared to talk about, those differences that oftentimes cause us to like say, no, I'm done. I can't talk to you anymore. We're going to talk about like, like love the sin, hate the sin, love the sinner, terminology where she might love that. And I think that's super problematic. And in the past, I would have been like, nope, if that's how you think, then we're not having the conversation. And I think there's a lot of those situations that we might be a little bit closer or might be on the same page, but we don't use the same language. And so I think we have to be able to talk some of this stuff out a little bit more so that we can kind of have a little bit more of an understanding and have those conversations rather than canceling the cancel culture, just kind of like severing that tie with each other. And so we've committed to just keep talking and keep trying to be honest with one another about how we see the world and all that sort of stuff. So I'd love to have folks, you can participate in that when it's live. You can ask questions and be a part of the conversation. Or again, you can just listen to it on a podcast whenever it tickles your fancy.
Oh, I love that. I will have as many links below as I possibly can. And it's very brave, to be able to do that. I think it's more about our ego being afraid of the change and the unknown. And also having like this sort of identity. And as soon as our identity is attacked, it's death to the ego. And we will fight to the death to have that identity that we have clung to as who we are, right? And I love that you're willing to go out of that space of the unknown and you're thinking, well, maybe there's other ways for me to look at things that I've thought of as important to me, and perhaps they're not quite so important, right?
Right. And we're not looking to change one another, but we both are looking to be changed in being with one another. Dang,
I love the way you said that. That's amazing. Well, Bonnie, thank you so much for being here on my show today. And I appreciate you so much. And like I said, I'm going to have links down there below. And I'm just going to say love, peace, and release to you. And thank you for watching, and let us know any comments. And please subscribe to mine as well as Bonnie's channel. I'll be, like I say, giving you links there. And let us know what you thought and what you'd like to see next. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. And I wish you the best of luck with everything.
Thank you.